And today we have a very interesting topic and a very interesting speaker. All along from the beginning of the pandemic and up until now, we have seen communication transition from wash your hands and sanitize, and it evolved to stay home and be safe. And then now we're in that mood of encouraging everyone and letting everyone know that we are all in this together. And we see communities reaching out to other communities. So what we need to understand is, where does all this place us, especially as business owners, and what really does it mean for us? So today we have Mrs. Antoinette Kamau. She's our main speaker today, and she's a seasoned communication specialist with exceptional skills in developing and implementing public relations and programs. Strategic communication strategies, crisis communication strategies and protocols as well, a stakeholder in engagement strategies. She's very passionate about highlighting developmental concerns and promoting sustainable development within global arena through storytelling. She is also a trainer and an adjunct lecturer at the Daystar University here in Nairobi. She currently is the CEO and the lead communications officer at Comken Limited, which is a PR and communications agency. She as well holds a Bachelor of Education in Degree and Linguistics and Literature from the University of Nairobi, a master's degree in communication from Daystar University, and is currently writing her PhD dissertation entitled Exploring Public Relations Practitioners' Approach of Dialogic Communication Principles during Stakeholder Engagement. At Daystar University, she also writes for the Business Daily newspaper. Antoinette is married with 3 teenage children. Outside of work, she enjoys playing golf, Zumba, and dancing. As a member of the Catholic Women Association, which is the CWA, Antoinette spends a lot of time participating in CWA activities, and she loves to travel and tries to travel at least once a year. She also loves spending time with family and friends. And she's a member of the Public Relations Society of Kenya, which is the PRSK, the African Public Relations Association, which is APRA, an Institute of Learning and Management, which is ILM, and the Women on Board, which is WOB. Welcome, Antoinette. We look forward to learning from you.
That I'd like to share with you that probably they could help us as we run our businesses. So if you kindly allow me to share my slide. Susan? Nite Natalie? Aisha?
Are you able to share your screen?
I'm sharing my screen, but I can't see you.
I'm here.
Can you see me? Can I start? Can you see me?
I can see you, yes.
You can see me?
I can see you, I can hear you very well.
So I'm okay, I proceed. Okay, I'm a bit new to these things. Okay, so I'll be talking about navigating through a crisis to ensure business continuity. And as I said, this is a very wide subject, so I'll just focus on probably trying to define what crisis is, what is the phases of crisis management, and just to have some case study on managing COVID-19. So COVID-19 crisis, and then I'll conclude. So I want to start with a story, the story of 2 banks. In 2016, two Kenyan banks were confronted with nightmare scenarios. There were very many rumors circulating on social media about their impending collapse, and these rumors caused widespread panic. This panic brought with it a lot of withdrawals by customers. Both banks really tried hard to refute the rumors and manage the crisis. By the end of the year, only one bank managed to survive well the pandemic and the surviving the crisis, or rather the rumors. And the surviving bank has gone on to grow and expand its footprint even further. The two banks were Family Bank and Chase Bank. So how did the Family Bank navigate the crisis and ensure that their business continued? They did two things. One, they reacted quickly and they took charge and control of the situation by planning properly and executing. So in the morning of the rumors, the CEO of the rumors, the CEO immediately held discussions, or rather meetings with various stakeholders. And these stakeholders were critical to the bank's business. They included the central bank governor, they included the board members and senior management. And then during the discussions, they also formed a crisis committee, or rather crisis management team. And this team was led by the CEO of the bank and the chair of the board. They also quickly came up with a crisis communications plan, which was activated and rolled out. And the plan also called for staff to reach out to individual depositors to calm the depositors and reassure them that their money was safe. And this also, because of the relationship that the bank had with their staff, they were able to do this. They were able to, the staff were able to reach out to the depositors because of the relationship that they had formed previously. So after that, they executed their plan, and the chair and the CEO and the board chair led the branches in executing this crisis management plan. All the depositors were called by the Family Bank staff, and they were assured that their money was safe. And again, because of the relationships that they had formed with influential customers, these customers were invited to visit the bank, the various bank branches, to verify all was well, so that they could help spread the message that the money was safe. And even the CEO went a step further and also visited the branches to motivate staff and customers. So what was the outcome of all this planning, proper planning and execution? The outcome was that the bank was able to continue its operation as it continued to deal with the crisis. And then also the customers they were reassured that all was well, and most of them opted not to withdraw their money, and central bank was kept at bay. Such is the difference of an effective crisis management has. An effective crisis management plan has, because without an effective crisis management, an organization can suffer loss and even close its business. So, having said that, what is a crisis? I'd just like us to look at a quick definition of what a crisis is. The word crisis comes from the Chinese word, which means danger and opportunity. And where there's danger, there's always an opportunity for you to transform, to see an opportunity and try to transform yourself. So crisis is any event that is expected to lead to an unstable or dangerous situation, which can affect an individual, can affect a group, and can also affect your business. And the main three elements of a crisis is that a crisis is always a threat to your business. A crisis has an element of surprise, and a crisis you have a very short time to make decisions during a crisis. And so how do some of these crises start? Crises can start from various things, but I just picked a few things where some of the crises that can face a business can come from. So crises can come from accidents or casualties. For example, your employees, when they're out there, like I know, like Neatworld, where they have many employees who go out and clean in various buildings, they can have an accident there or a casualty. That is a crisis can stem from there. A crisis can also stem from class action or lawsuits. This could be lawsuits, even uh, lawsuits against your business by some of their customers. A crisis can come from consumer activists, and some of these activists sometimes can seek to influence the way in which your goods and services are produced and delivered in your business. So they can influence that, and that can cause a crisis. Crisis can also come from defects and recalls. For example, you're producing a product and you roll out a product and the product is defective. It can be recalled, and that can be a crisis, and of course dent the image of your business. Again, a crisis can start from discrimination, from labor suits, maybe from your employees. Like now, most of us have laid off our employees, and if we don't have proper contracts, they can take us to court, and that is also a crisis. Crisis can also come from management, catastrophes like the one we're currently facing now, white collar crime. These are crimes that are committed. These are non-violent crimes that are committed, like maybe through fraud, and even from other areas. So crisis that face our business can stem from some of these issues that I'm mentioning. So there are very many types of crises, but I've just mentioned a few crises that can face our business. These are, let's say, technological crises, and most of our business, we use a lot of technology to serve our customers. And if that technology breaks down, there's a crisis. For example, Mumo photographers, a business uses a lot of cameras to, to run his business. So if his cameras break down or they're stolen, that would be a crisis, an example of a technological crisis, because his will slow down and he'll not be able to operate at his minimal, and that will have an impact at his maximum, and that would have an impact on his business. Financial crisis. This happens when maybe a business is hit by sudden loss of large amounts of money. For example, you can be bankrupt, or you can have massive revenue losses, maybe due to inflation or sudden change of trend in the market. So when this happens, again, that is a crisis, because you're also not able to run your business because you have a low financial base. Another type of crisis that our business can face, and we're currently facing, is the natural crisis that we are now facing, the COVID, which is a natural crisis. We can also face a crisis of malice. In business, we have competitors, and some of our competitors, they don't understand healthy competition, so they can be malicious, and maybe some even try to hack your website, or they try to post bad information about your business so that they look better than you and you look bad. We also have a crisis of deception, and this one maybe can come about when one of our employees in our businesses decides to 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 give out leak information about our business with the intent of causing harm to the organizations, because also you have employees from different areas, from diverse backgrounds, so you can have one who is out to harm the organization. And also we have personnel crisis, where sometimes our employees can also make demands upon us. They can make demands about some of the services that we are offering, or they make demands of their salaries, and then they have boycotts or riots. So that is a kind of a crisis that we are likely to face from our employees who make demands upon us. We also have organizational crisis. This is a crisis whereby an organization or a business can um, go out of their way, or rather secretly try to harm their customers by probably, for example, a business is selling sanitizer. So a business would try and dilute that sanitizer and sell it to make for his or her own personal gain, as opposed to satisfying the customer. So sometimes we as business people can harm our clients by not giving them good products. And then again, workplace violence. This is a crime that we are also likely to face when our employees go fighting within the business premises, and also that brings about a bad reputation for our business. So those are some of the crises that I picked that we are likely to face as we run our businesses. And then just quickly, just to share with you some of the common features of a crisis. When you are experiencing a crisis, you find that the situation happens unexpectedly. It is sudden. You're not expecting it, and then you are forced to make decisions. Decisions are required to you are required to make decisions urgently. Like for example, maybe you are selling, maybe like Tex Butchery is selling meat, and something happens with the meat. The meat is defective. Probably you bought it when it was not fresh and you did not know. So you have to make decisions of calling back that meet immediately. And also during a crisis, the time is short. You don't have time to really investigate, investigate and find out what happened. The time is short. And then again, during a crisis, there are very many, there are specific threats that are identified. Sometimes it could be a threat to your employees, it could be a threat to the safety of the environment, it could be a threat to your financial situation. So some threats are always identified in a crisis. And then again, another feature of a crisis is that there's urgent demand for information that received. Your employees are asking for information. Your customers want information. The media wants information. So there are a lot of demands for information that you're receiving that you need to give out. And then again, during a crisis, there's that sense of loss of control. You're not in control of your daily of your day-to-day running of a business. In essence, the crisis kind of like controls you. So there's that sense you feel that you do not really have the usual control that you normally have as you run your business. And then again, pressure builds up because you have to make decisions quickly. The time is short. You have no control. There's so much pressure. And then again, another feature of a crisis is that routine business becomes increasingly difficult to continue. Like now, we are facing this current crisis. We are not able to carry out our routine business. Our business has been disrupted. And then again, in a crisis, another feature is that sometimes, or based on the crisis, your reputation suffers a lot, and you have to really work hard to ensure that you repair that reputation. And then again, communicating to your various stakeholders becomes increasingly difficult to manage because information flying all over the place. Social media is abuzz with communication. So also sometimes it becomes a bit difficult to manage that communication. So having just defined what a crisis is, talked about some types of crises and some of the common features of crisis. So then what do we do? How do we then go and try to contain this crisis, and how do we try to reduce the threats of this crisis? So we do this by managing the crisis. This is what we call crisis management. And crisis management is the process is a process that is designed to help a business to prevent or minimize threats that are posed by a crisis on the business or the stakeholders. A crisis management helps organizations navigate a crisis. Organizations of businesses navigate a crisis successfully, and while at the same time ensuring that their business continues. There's business continuity during the crisis. So some of the objectives of crisis management is that uh, crisis management will help you protect your stakeholders. These are your employees, your customers, your suppliers, all the relevant stakeholders. So your objective is to protect them. Another objective is you want to minimize the negative financial impact that the crisis can bring. You want to minimize the negative brand reputation that the crisis can also bring about on your brand. You want also to Another objective is that you want to be able to understand the nature of the crisis, and you also want to be able to understand the crisis so that you're also able to communicate the crisis effectively. So that is how you manage the crisis. In crisis management, there are three critical phases that a business will undergo during a crisis. So we have the pre-crisis phase, and this is the initial phase before the crisis takes place. And then we have the crisis response phase. This is now where you are in a crisis. So what do you do? How do you respond? How do you go again to try to start building the reputation that has been damaged? And then the last phase is the post-crisis phase. After the crisis, what do you do? What do you do after the crisis? So I'll just briefly talk about each phase. So as I said, the pre-crisis phase, this is the phase before the crisis. And I like to say that this is the phase where we need to prepare ourselves. So in this phase, what are we supposed to do? What should we do to prepare ourselves effectively in the event that we are faced with a crisis? We need to sit down and anticipate the various risks or crisis scenarios that our business is likely to face. So you sit down and list them down and ask yourself, what are some of the risks that may become threats, may become crises in my business? What are some of the crisis scenarios that that my business is likely to face? So you list them down, and then you also find ways, list down ways of how are we able to prevent or reduce the risks that may lead to a crisis. So you come up with a plan on how you will go about reducing those risks. And then also you ask yourself, you need to come up with a crisis management plan, because now you have identified your risks, you have anticipated the crisis scenarios, you know how you're going to be able, you find ways of reducing those risks. So then you need to come up with a crisis management plan. How do I manage how do I manage this crisis in the event that they face my business? Then another important thing you need to, this is the phase where you need to select a crisis committee. You need to select that committee. You need to train that crisis committee needs to be trained. You need to assign roles and responsibilities of that crisis committee or crisis management team. And this is also the time you want to now to test the plan that you've made. Just like the way in an organization or in a business you have drills, you have drills to, for example, a fire drill. So it's the same thing. You need to test your crisis preparedness, or you need to test your crisis management plan. And so a business can react faster and more effectively to a crisis with adequate preparation. And then also I want to talk a bit about the crisis management team, because it is very important in managing a crisis. So what is a crisis management team? This is a team that is formed to protect a business against adverse effects of a crisis. This is a team that prepares the organization for any inevitable threats, or prepares the business for threats, and comes up with diverse strategies to help the business come out of a difficult situation or come out of a crisis as soon as possible. And what is the composition of a crisis management team? It should first of all, as business owners, we should be the leaders. We should head this crisis committees or crisis management teams. So the team should comprise of a senior person like the CEO or you as a business leader. And then the team should have representatives from different expertise. It's good to have a representative from communication because in PR, because they'll help you manage, they'll help you draft the messages, they will help you manage the entire crisis. It's also good to have a team from legal, because now this team will be able to look at the legal implications that may come with that crisis. It's good to have somebody somebody with expertise in operations and finance, because they'll be able to look at the financial implication that the crisis can come up with, that comes with the crisis. It's also good to have somebody from human resource to deal with the internal publics, and also again somebody from the media to help you to communicate that crisis well. So the team's main role is to analyze the crisis situation, as I said, formulate a crisis management plan that will save the business reputation and good standing in the industry, and ensure that there's business continuity. And so how does a crisis committee, or rather a crisis management team, work? So how it works is that a leader is appointed to take charge of the situation, and more often than not, this should be the head of the CEO of the business. And then the team proceeds to, first of all, define the crisis, prioritize and rank the issues that are surrounding that particular crisis, because that's how they will deal with the crisis. The team also goes to identify the critical business operations, and these are operations that support the production of those goods and services. They need to also establish that these are some of the they generate, these goods and services generate significant income for the organization, and are in very high demand in the business. And if they are stopped, uh, how can they significantly damage the organization's business? Then after they determine all that and prioritize and rank the issues and know that which issues will greatly impact the income of the organization or the business operations. They then go ahead to hold discussions. They, of course, it's good to take suggestions from the other team. They'll go ahead and form a crisis plan. Then they'll activate this crisis management plan and communicate the plan to all the stakeholders, to all the employees, and to the relevant stakeholders, so that they all understand. They're all in this together, so that they know what is happening. So we've already have the crisis management team. So the crisis management plan, what is it? Because most organizations have plans, but they're not sure what the plan is, what purpose the plan will serve. So a crisis management plan is a reference tool that guides a business's crisis response. This crisis plan will tells the business of the organization how they're going to respond and how they will manage during the crisis. So what are some of the key elements that we should put in our crisis management plans? There are many, but I've just picked a few. So in your crisis management plan, you need to have a set of, I had mentioned this before, you need to have a set of crisis scenarios that the business could face and the business operations that could be affected because of the crisis that you've identified. Then also you need to have pre-drafted standard response messages, so that you're not, so that they are ready. You're not running all over the place looking for templates to design. In the plan, you need to have an analysis of all the stakeholders that could be affected by that crisis. Your customers, your suppliers, all the relevant stakeholders that are beneficial to your business and their contacts. Also, that your crisis management plan should should link those preset responses to the corresponding crisis scenarios that you had already established when you're in the first phase of crisis planning. And then, of course, you need to have a chain of command, so that because the communication has to come from a centralized place. So you need to identify a spokesperson where all the communications will come from a centralized place, so that during the crisis, when you're responding to a crisis. Then also, again, you need to also be able to, in that plan, you need to have you need to spell out the crisis communication, their roles and their responsibilities, so that they know what their roles and responsibilities are. And then again, another important element, you need to have clear communications channels that will reach everyone within the shortest times possible. Again, you need to have backup resources for every part of the plan. And as I mentioned, again, you need to have a plan on when you're going to have those regular simulation exercises to test how prepared you are with your crisis management plan. And then again, you need to have post-crisis reviews for continuous plan improvement, to continuously improve in your crisis management. And then also another very important thing that you need to have is the crisis communication plan in the pre-crisis. We are still in the pre-crisis stage. We are still preparing. So again, in your preparation, you need to have a crisis communications plan, which has all the draft messages, because having this template for crisis communication would save a business a lot of time when drafting key messages. So you need to have those templates ready, so that when a crisis happens, you just remove the template and just fill in the details. And then also, when you're crafting a crisis communications plan, you need to take into consideration the basic principles of crisis communication. Because when you're communicating during a crisis, your communication needs to be prompt. You need to be honest in your communication. You need to be informative and provide all the information that is required, and you need to back your communication with facts. In your communication, you need to show compassion and empathy, especially to those who are affected by the crisis. Those who are affected by the crisis. You need to be also ensure that in your communication, you are interactive, you are communicating, you're engaging, you allow people to ask you questions, and you respond. So you need to be able to be aware of those basic principles, crisis communications as you plan your crisis communications plan. And again, as you continue to, craft your crisis communications plan, you need to identify all the critical communications channels that you're going to use to pass the messages. And it's very good to incorporate all the channels. It's very good to also draft communication templates for all the platforms. And it's good to include all the platforms, include memos in your communications plan, because some stakeholders will require you to write memo, to communicate with them through memos. You need to have a template for your memo. You need to have a template for your emails. You need to have a template for your press release. You need to have a template for your social media posts. You also need to have telephone contacts, because you need to probably to get in touch with them, with some of your stakeholders by making phone calls. And then of course, social media is that's the way communication is. You have to also know how you're going to use a social media space in crisis communication, because you need to use social media very well, because social media is good. It'll be good for you to issue rapid and direct communication updates about the crisis. You can also use social media to provide support for people who are looking for tips and guidelines concerning the crisis that may have faced your business. You need also to use social media to listen on what people are saying about the crisis, and what kind of perceptions, also the public perceptions and reactions in regards to the crisis that has faced your business. So we've talked about the first phase. That is the pre-crisis phase. This is the phase just before the crisis, where I said it's a phase where you are preparing for a crisis. You have all those things in place. You have your crisis committee team in place. You have your crisis management plan in place. You have your crisis communications plan in place. Everything is in place. So now you go to the second phase. This is now so during a crisis, what do you do? You're faced with your crisis. You're prepared, or probably you're not prepared. What do you do during a crisis? So this second phase of the crisis response phase is the second phase. It takes two forms. There's the initial response, and then there's reputation and repair. So in the initial response, this is what a business does immediately. There's a crisis. This is what you do. This is the initial response. So this covers the various communication channels you're going to use to release or to respond to the crisis. And so this will include, maybe you probably need to initially respond by sending out a press release, or by calling up, sending out a statement, or calling a press conference, or sending out messages using the various communications channels that you will have identified, or that are most effective to address the crisis. And so for you to be effective in your initial response, you have to be quick in respond. Do not take long to respond to a crisis. Don't respond after 2 days. You have to respond immediately. So you need to be quick in your response. You need to be accurate when you respond. So that means you need to be very fast to get all the facts and be accurate in your response. You need to be consistent when you're responding. You need to also prioritize your objectives. What is your key objective as you respond? Is it safety, or is it the well-being of your customers? What is your objective? And then again, in your response, you need to show compassion and empathy when you're responding. Again, you need to use all the available communications channels. And again, when you're responding to a crisis, you need to offer support. So that is the first form, the initial response. And then secondly, as you respond, you also want to, this is when an organization, this is what a business does to repair its reputation that is being damaged by that particular crisis. So, and I just want to say that during this, in this phase, when you are trying to repair the image or the reputation of a business, you should not deny that there's a crisis. You should not deny. You should take responsibility and acknowledge that yes, there's a crisis. You are facing a crisis. You should not use scapegoats when you should not use scapegoat. There shouldn't be no scapegoating. You should just accept, take responsibility. You should not make excuses. You should not make any justifications. Or there's a crisis because maybe the manufacturer did not give me a good product. you should not make any justification, no excuses, no scapegoats, don't deny, just acknowledge and take responsibilities, apologize. Very important when you apologize, because you show empathy, you show that you care. And then also, depending on the crisis, you can also say that you offer compensation for those who may have been harmed during the crisis. And of course, during a crisis, there will be many people accusing you, so do not attack the accuser. Just acknowledge, apologize, and give facts. So that will go a long way. If you do that, it will go a long way in helping you to repair your reputation. And then again, when you are responding to your crisis, one thing that is very important is that no matter the reputational danger your business might face, you must tell the truth. Tell the truth as it is. Tell it clearly. Tell it succinctly. And because the art of being clever or linguistically elusive with information will always compromise on the integrity of your business. So tell the truth, because it's telling the truth is the moral thing to do. And then again, in every crisis, the number one guiding principle is that you must always protect the safety and satisfaction of your customers. Your customers are king, so they come first. So that should be the first guiding principle. So no matter what it takes for your reputation, you must say the truth to protect the safety and satisfaction of your customers. And again, when you're communicating, you must communicate openly, you must communicate honestly, and you must give facts. Because if you don't respond truthfully, eventually the truth will come up. So you need to ask yourself how often cover-up becomes worse than a crime, and what would that do to your business. So now you've responded well, you've taken action, you've responded. So now the crisis is over. We come to the post-crisis phase. The crisis is over. What do you do? So after surviving, you've survived the crisis. After surviving the crisis, or after the crisis is over, your business will need to continue repairing its reputation. And now during this phase, this is a phase where you want to, there's so many things going on in your mind. This is a phase where you are recognizing the changes that have come to play because of the crisis, and you adapt, and you decide you adapt accordingly or early. Like right now, the COVID crisis, we've seen the changes, and some businesses are adapting accordingly, and some adapted early enough. So again, in this phase, you want to establish whether your business will have to transform entirely. And I know some businesses have actually transformed entirely because of this COVID pandemic. You also, at this time, you want to conduct an audit and ask yourself, what is best for my business? Do I need to reinvent myself? So do I need a reinvention strategy? Do I need to abandon my business and start all over again? Or do I want to retain my business and repair what I've lost? And then again, this is not in any particular order. You want to keep, like during the response phase, you probably made promises that you'll deliver all the information regarding the crisis. You made some promises. So this is the time to keep the promises that you made when you're responding to the crisis. This is the time you want to make those promises. And this is also the time you want to try and return back to the business, and the crisis should no longer be a focal point. Your focal point will be now the next phase. What are you going to do after the crisis? So now this is the time you want to return back to your business, and you should not let the crisis be a focal point. This is also a time you want to continuously update your stakeholders. These are your employees, your customers, your suppliers, on the progress of recovery efforts, again, depending on the crisis that you're facing. This is also the time you want to tell them about corrective steps that your business is taking, or any investigations, again, that are being done, again, depending on the nature of the crisis. This is also a time you want to rebuild internally. You want to look at your internal publics, your employees, and see how they can also better understand the crisis that are likely to face the business, and help in future planning, and also to become ambassadors, to become your ambassadors, so that they can help you to help the business help you to repair your business. This is also a time you want to count your losses, whether it's financial loss, whether it's the loss of your reputation, whether it's the loss of your staff. You just want to look down and count the losses that you've been incurred during the crisis. This is the time you want to communicate any changes in your business to your stakeholders so that you bring them on board. This is a time, if you do not have a crisis management plan, this is now a time to start developing that plan, to start coming up with a crisis communications plan. This is a time also you want to come up and form a crisis committee to help you deal with your crisis and try to put in the lessons that you've learned in the crisis that you have faced. This is a time you also want to create new content. You want to highlight your products. You want to tell a different story about your business. So having said that, we have looked at the 3 phases of crisis management: before the pre-crisis stage, before the crisis, during the crisis, how do you respond, and after the crisis, taking stock of what has happened. And I just wanted to, as I finish, wanted to look at the COVID-19 crisis, because as a crisis, this pandemic can be listed as among the most severe in history, and it has impacted. Its impact is felt globally. We as business people are feeling the impact. We are also facing major disruptions in our supply chains. Our markets have shrunk. Some of us have probably partially closed, and there are a lot of changes in the workplace. So I felt that as business people, we can learn vital lessons on navigating crisis from several world leaders who are demonstrating exemplary crisis communication and management skills during this in managing COVID-19 crisis. And I just want to share with you 3 of these most prominent who I've looked at, and see some of the lessons that we as business people can learn from these prominent world leaders. So I'll start with the first case study. This is Andrew Cuomo. I'm sure you've seen him or you've listened to him. He's the New York governor. And just to give a background, in the US, the New York state is the hardest hit by the COVID-19 virus. If it were a country, it would have been the 2nd worst hit country in the world. With such big numbers, New York has been struggling to treat its patients. It's been struggling to get the necessary protective equipment and having its population comply with the restrictive directives. So the crisis communication approach that Governor Cuomo has taken, he has employed 3 key elements in his crisis communications approach. He has employed authority, he has employed honesty, and empathy. So the authority is displayed when he talks about what needs to be done to avoid a worst case scenario. And he backs by using scientific facts, which he quotes and displays for everyone to see. His honesty is displayed when he doesn't know something. He does not try to convince people otherwise, or neither does he make promises about that the pandemic will end tomorrow. His empathy is displayed when he talks about the effects of restrictions to ordinary New Yorkers. He tells them he understands. He even shares how the restrictions are also affecting him and his family as a person. And then you can see his forthrightness with facts shows that he's transparent and he's trustworthy and accountable. So as a result of his crisis communication approach, and the governor has succeeded in getting New Yorkers to cooperate with his administration, and restrictions are actually being adhered to. He's authority leader and a trusted source. He's an authority leader, and he's also a trusted source on the status of the pandemic, as well as he's a source of comfort and reassurance to the people of New York. So what the lesson that I picked here that we can learn as business leaders or as business owners is that honesty and empathy are important in crisis management. So when we communicate with our stakeholders, our employees, our customers, we must be truthful. We should not sugarcoat the situation. And also we must be sympathetic with their situation. We must acknowledge their fears, but we must show them that we understand what they are going through. Another leader that I wanted just to share with you is the second case study is Jacinda. She's the New Zealand, the Prime Minister of New Zealand, and I'm sure you've read about her, you've listened to her. And just another quick background: New Zealand has not been badly affected by the pandemic. Partly, or part of the reason is part of the reason why is that, according to experts, it is because of its early response. And I talked about responding quickly to a crisis. So the country instituted a complete lockdown early enough, and to make this lockdown a success, through the citizens needed to be cooperative. So what crisis communication approach did Jacinda used? She's credited with not only acting early in locking down the country, but also getting her citizens to willingly cooperate. And the approach that she has used is identified as one, direct giving, meaning making, and empathy. So instead of issuing orders on restriction, Lucinda chose to offer direction on what, as a country, they should do. She went on to explain the reasons why they should stay at home. And she identified with them on the challenges brought about by the lockdown. And again, her communication is frequent, her messages are cohesive, and she keeps repeating, stay at home and save lives, to avoid any confusions. She's also noted for hosting Facebook Live sessions to engage with her citizens and address their concerns in an informal and friendly manner. She's also very personal. She sometimes gets personal by exposing part of her life, something many leaders would avoid. She would go on Facebook and show people how her home office, how she's working from home. As a result of this crisis communications approach, she's trusted. Her government approach is trusted in tackling the pandemic. The lockdown has been embraced with fewer complaints. Her early response has enabled New Zealand to avoid the worst outbreak. So, as business people, again, what do we learn from Jacinda? We learn that quick response to a crisis is crucial. And also, when communicating with our stakeholders, we need to explain to them in a relatable way the threat that our business is facing, the choices it has, and what the organization should do, or what the business should do to tackle the crisis. We should not dictate measures. Instead, we should enlist the support of everyone. Lastly, last but not least, our very own Mutai Kagwe, who is our cabinet secretary. Again, there's been a steady increase in the number of the COVID-19 cases in Kenya. I think we're about 930. And some of the challenges the government is facing is tackling the pandemic include inadequate kits, there's ignorance from our citizens, there's non-compliance, the stigmatization of persons released from quarantine, and a lot of fake news has been going around. Again, his crisis communications approach, excuse me, he has a harmonized and organized approach to managing a crisis. For starters, the Ministry of Health is using device communications platforms to communicate. There's communication on the print and broadcast media, there's communication on social media. And our CES has constantly kept the country abreast on everything from the rise in patient numbers to the hopeful news of patients recovering by issuing timely and accurate information on a daily basis. He displays authority with his body language and tone of voice. And again, all his etiquette and mannerism fall into play. He uses facts and consequences to drive his point home. And one thing I like about him is that he has formed a crisis committee comprising of various heads of different ministries, and he's also designated various spokespeople. So when he's in his absence, there's a spokesperson who's communicating. He has also involved all critical stakeholders. He has involved health professionals, he's involved educators, he's involved the police, the media, and the governors whose counties have been affected by this pandemic. And he communicates with his stakeholders, as well as he provides assurance. So as a result of his approach, he's consistently ranked as the most trusted authority in Kenya on COVID-19. There's also consistency in messages being released. His directives are largely being followed without need of restoring a lot of force. And the lesson that we can learn from our CS is that key messages need to be emphasized regularly. And also local leadership, we need to involve local leadership in community engagement. And we as business people need also to treat the media as our partners in public engagement or in sending out messages. We need, even as business leaders, to address any challenges, address complaints, and address fake news promptly before they overshadow key crisis communications messages. As I wind up, I think PR is important in crisis management, because for for a business to successfully tackle a crisis and ensure business continuity, requires the support of all stakeholders. It's important to have a crisis management plan for business, as a plan serves as a guidebook to navigate and contain a crisis and reduce the impact of the crisis to your business and ensure that your business continues. And of course, again, effective communication. You need to have an effective communication plan in winning over the support, because the communication plan helps you shape messages to your stakeholders. And I want to leave you with the words of Andy Gilman. He says that the secret of crisis management is not good versus bad. It is preventing the bad from getting worse. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Antoinette. So that was quite interesting. A general overview of what is going on around us, and not only in the region. However, I'd like to note that in the room we have different sizes of businesses. Some that can afford to have an internal communication crisis team entirely, and some that may opt to outsource. So in that note, especially for the small businesses in Kenya, the SMEs, which are the majority of them, what advice would you give these people, especially now that to start to think of a budget to outsource is also another headache? Like, what, in your view, what advice would you best give these business people?
Okay, for those business people who may not be able to, who probably they don't have a legal department, HR department and all that, and probably they do not have a budget to come up with to get an agency to do that for them, I would suggest, like, for example, let me use the example of BNI. We're all members of BNI, and we are lucky to be in BNI. We are like 41 of us, and and in our membership, we have all the expertise that we need. We have a person from legal, we have a person from HR, we have a person from finance, we have a person from communications. So in a group like BNI, and also we have an advantage because we, as BNI members, we have a pretty good understanding of the businesses that we are in. So for members who are in BNI, I would suggest that you approach those members who within BNI, you approach those members, like the legal person from communication, because they already know your business. You approach them, and then you request them to be part of your crisis committee. And for those other probably businesses who may not be lucky enough like us to be BNI, you can, I'm sure also you have those businesses, they have peers, the people who probably they went to school with and who are in different fields. For now, they could approach them and request them to be part of their committee, to be part of their business, and they could approach them to be part of their business, so that, and request them to be part of their crisis, to be a crisis team. Because I'm sure as business people, they have made friends, they have established relationships, they have friends in different fields, so they could approach them and request them to be part of their committee if they cannot afford to employ a PR agency to do that for them. I'm trying to remove my whatever, my slides.
Okay. Actually, we didn't even get to see them, and we thought you had an issue with them.
Oh. Okay.
But all went well.
Okay. So
now,
what were you...
I'm really...
Okay.
I'm really glad that you mentioned BNI, because this is a very resourceful platform for business people. And either way you look, you always find someone to assist. You always find an expertise that you probably don't have in your organization that could assist you. Now, going on to add that Antoinette is so resourceful such that she has templates ready made for those who didn't know, could easily log in into her website, comken.com, and she's gone further to prepare like what she was calling crisis communication specifically for the COVID-19, and she has templates that you can download and use. All you need to do is to edit them to suit your organization. Yeah, so that could be a starting point as you even reach out to her for her expertise in PR communication and how to handle this crisis management. Now, Antoinette, I have a question for you. Yeah, you say that we need to prepare in advance. We need to have different scenarios of different crises that could come up, and have an action plan, go over them as a drill.
Yeah.
In your point of view, how well prepared do you think businesses were in Kenya, especially in the region? Do you think it caught us by surprise in terms of being prepared?
For this particular pandemic?
Yes.
You see, like a natural crisis, you see, it's very also hard to prepare for a natural crisis like this one. This was not expected. This has never happened in the history. I've never heard that the whole world can close down. So I don't think any business was prepared for this, because this is a natural thing. It was not foreseen. So in my own observation, I don't think that this particular pandemic was prepared. We were prepared for this particular pandemic, but also if we had, and I know that most businesses do not take communication seriously. They don't. But for those businesses that have, or those organizations that have comprehensive crisis communication strategy, they plan for natural crises like floods, like those natural whatever. So they will be for those businesses that have a clear and effective crisis communication strategy. They are kind of like prepared to manage or reduce or to get through this kind of pandemic. But the ones that do not take communication seriously, most of them have been taken off guard. But what I see is that they've quickly adapted to the situation, and they've become innovative, and they're changing their business. They're taking their business online. They're coming up with, so they've become innovative. The crisis had made, as I said, a crisis normally, there's also an opportunity. They've seen an opportunity in the crisis, and they're making the best of it, the best way that they can, and they're adapting slowly. So that's what I can say.
Great. So I also noted that you, and before I even make this comment, I'd like to remind our attendees that you can post your questions in the Q&A tab. So, and Antoinette will be happy to clarify or to answer for us. Now, I like that you used the case study of the two banks, and somewhere in there you mentioned relationship with customers and how important it is. And this actually defined why one bank was able to emerge out of the rumors and another sank. So I like to note that your point with relationship with customers has to come from far beyond. And if you haven't done so already as a business person, it's something you need to think about and start doing immediately. But now, away from that, that doesn't deter you from communicating and sending out those emails, the pre, post, and after communication of crisis. You can still go on with that. So let me check if we have any questions. So, all right, no questions posted. There we have one. So this one is from Wanjiro Mambo, yeah? You can hear me well?
Yeah.
Okay. So Wanjiro Mambo is asking, when you make one communication, let's say to suppliers or to clients, how soon should you do a follow-up, especially when you make a communication about this crisis and things go unexpected? Are there timelines and the timing to change, to, I think, to transition from, because every week we are experiencing something new and there's no way of telling what we could wake up to the next day. So what is the timeline to follow up and even to change and rephrase according to the new status that we're in?
Okay, so I would say that probably you're like, to your suppliers, you send them an email, you tell them whatever you need to tell them, and then you give it like 2 days, and you follow up that email with a telephone call and tell them, I said this. You follow up that with that telephone call on the email that you sent, and then if there are any changes, then you keep on updating the suppliers as and when the changes come, so that also the supplier knows what is happening. Also, don't wait for too long. So I would say that as and when the changes come, you keep on updating the supplier so that he's in the picture. Maybe he's waiting for you to pay him rent, and if you take 1 week, you said you'll pay him his rent next week, and then next week reaches, you haven't paid, and then you take so long to pay him. That will cause a lot of friction. So you need to constantly update your suppliers as and when the changes come. You need to continuously keep communicating.
Okay, so there is no end to it now.
No, because now things are changing. Today there's something else. So you have to keep up. You have to keep him informed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So Keruba is also noting that the case study of the two banks were very interesting, and Chase Bank actually had to change brands.
Yeah, they did change brand. I think they were bought and then they were bought off. Yes, so that they wanted to look different, because you also don't want to carry that image of you being a bank that you being a bank that is not trusted. So what they did, that I think they sold off and they got a new brand. They were bought off. So it was just good to start afresh.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Keruba, so sometimes that could also be a more expensive way of trying to, what you were calling the cover up, because you didn't do what needed to be done and you didn't follow through the process. So
Yes.
now you either die or you come back, but from a very expensive point of view.
And then you really have to work hard to instill that brand in the minds of the public. Who is Chase Bank? You need to build that trust, and building trust takes a lot of work. And as you rightly said, it's also very expensive.
Okay. So Keruba is also asking, she needs to know what Family Bank did or did not do.
What? Chase Bank, not
Family Bank. What they did to remain relevant and in business, or what they did not do, which is what Chase Bank did.
No, it's Family Bank who survived.
Who survived? Yeah. So she's asking, could you share what Family Bank did or did not do?
Okay, as I said in my story, Family Bank, they reacted quickly, and they took charge of the situation. They quickly formed a crisis management team, and they quickly formed the plan, and they executed the plan. They did not waste time. They executed the plan, and they took charge of the situation. Yes.
So the biggest advantage that Family Bank had was that they already had a relationship with their customers. Yeah, so it was easy for them to reach out to their customers at a personal level to reassure them. And Antoinette gave an example of even inviting some of the customers to go to their branches and verify that the money was still intact.
And also, one key thing that they did is, now the CEO of Family Bank went out of his way. He went to all the branches and actually reassured first of all, his internal publics, the staff, and then he reassured the customers that your money is safe. This is now, he's come out from his low seat and he's gone down to the ground to talk to people. So that gives a lot of trust and credibility in the bank. And that's reassurance that the CEO has come and he's spoken to us. It made some of those depositors just not withdraw the money. The fact that the CEO went down to the ground and talked to them personally, that giving that personal touch and showing, as I said, empathy and compassion and reassurance is very important to, especially during a crisis.
Great. So Kerubo, I hope that's clear for you. So we have David. David is in the field of security, and he has a series of questions, yeah? So I'll start with legal or insurance implications of admitting.
You see, as I said, you have to be truthful. And being truthful is your moral obligation to be truthful. Because when you twist stories or when you lie, and you know nowadays with the internet, I mean, even when you have a crisis, even before you know it, even your own employee would give out information on Twitter or on Facebook, or he'll send out a video about the crisis. So even before, that's why you need to act fast. Even before you go out and speak, the crisis is already out there in the public domain. They have an idea of what happened. So you are going out there to withhold the truth, and the truth, it's already out there, even with one of your employees. So it's always better, no matter how much it will cost the reputation of your business, to say the truth. So you'll be forgiven for saying the truth, but you cannot be forgiven for covering up. And you'll be caught eventually that you lied. And now, do you want to deal with lies, or do you want to deal with taking responsibility of the crisis? So I say that you need to say the truth, and say the truth and back your truth with facts.
Okay, so David, the truth shall set you free. So I feel like the series of questions, let me just read a couple of them because the answer might also be intertwined. What if you're unable to get all the facts immediately? And the other one is, what if the delays or challenge is external?
Okay, let me take the first one. The first one, you said, what if you're not able to get the information fast? So what happens, a crisis has come up. At least you know basic things. You know that, for example, you are fitting, like, let's say express plumbers, they are plumbing. You are fitting the plumbing system in a building, and then the plumbing system burst and the whole building, there's water flooded. So let's say something like that. So I'm sure when the crisis happens, you have those, what happened and when it happened. You have those minimal facts. So you go out there and you say, today at 4 o'clock in the evening, the pumping system that we had placed in Westlands broke, and it has caused massive damage. Investigations are still going on. We will update you as we investigate, as more information unfolds. So you give your information the way you get it. You can't wait for 2 days until you get the facts, because in a crisis there is no time and there's urgency in information. So you give the information in bits. You give what you have, and then you say you will, as you get more information, you'll update them. That's why you need to have a schedule of releasing that information. Because when a crisis happens, you don't have all the information at a go, but you have that initial information. Go out and tell people what happened, when, but we are still investigating and we'll keep you updated. And you've even seen when there's a crisis, like a big crisis, and when there's a problem, the spokesperson always comes and gives information as and when the information comes. So there's no excuse of not giving information. You give the information when it comes, and then you schedule. Like you'll be briefing your stakeholders every 2 hours, or probably you'll be sending them an email, or you'll be posting information every 2 hours as the information comes, because investigations are still going
on. Okay, so he goes on to ask, what if the delays or the challenge is external and is genuinely external? For example, manufacturer or clearing delays.
As I said,
the truth, and to avoid client perception that you are scapegoating. Okay.
as I just said, you have some basic information. You give out that basic information as you wait for the information from your manufacturers come. And because I just think from your manufacturers, probably if they're in China, it's a telephone call or an email that should not take you more than 3 hours to get, especially if there's a crisis and it has to do with what they, with the product that they've sent you. So as I said, keep on releasing that information as it comes. And also it just goes back to relationships. What kind of relationships have you built with your manufacturer that if you need information, he'll take 3 days to give you information? So again, it just goes back to what kind of relationships do you have with their suppliers? Do you have with your tenants? Do you have with your customers? It just goes back there. Because if you have a relationship with your manufacturer, if there's a crisis, they know that you have a crisis, they will be the first ones to fax. And nowadays, I mean, we live in a global village. It's very easy to get information. So that should not be an excuse. And I know that you can get information within 24 hours, you can get information. Then you can provide that information to your stakeholders. And you tell them that you are getting information and you'll be releasing that information in one day. So they will wait for the information because you have told them. Susan.
Okay. And he goes on to ask a really interesting question. Yes?
No, I had finished.
How do you counter fake news? Oh, you had finished. Okay.
You
So,
counter fake news
how do you counter fake news?
by, first of all, being quick to respond and telling the side of your story, giving facts and telling the side of your story and backing up your story with facts and figures, and being consistent in your information. That's how you counter fake news. Also, you have to quickly respond, because also when you take time to respond, and when you refuse to respond, you refuse to comment, you leave a gap. You leave that information gap, and people fill in that information gap with fake news. So you need to be quick to respond, give consistent information, and give facts, and back your facts with evidence, statistics, and figures, and be consistent. That is the only way to tame fake news.
Mm-hmm.
That is a good way
now,
of
how
taming.
do you deal with? Yes. So he goes on to ask how you deal with the competitor release of a product that is cheaper, technically a better fake, and not costed properly. Now you have to realize that David is also in his security business. Part of it is the PPEs, yeah, and we've all seen how that business has evolved here in the region. And I sort of like understand where he's coming from when he asks this question. So how does he get to deal with this unfair competition?
I think for me, I would say that one, it's the way you package your products and services. Is the way you package your product, is the way you inform, it's the information that you put out there. For me, as a user of that product, how do I perceive that product? Is the way I perceive that product that is of good quality, is the way you, as the owner of that product, communicates or tells me. So it's in the way you package information, it's the way you tell your story, is the way you communicate to me about your product, to be able to tell me that this is a good product, it's legit. So it's all those credentials of the product. They have to come out. The credentials, you have to show that this product, how the product works, why it is good, why it's better, why should I buy it and not buy the other product. It's just the way you package your information and package your message to convince me and show me as a buyer how credible that product is. And that will be able to, I think, from a communications point of view, to beat your competitor, to beat this fake, and also do demonstrations. It's just the way you, the whole, just entire package. How do you package your product?
Mm-hmm.
And there are very many ways of packaging your product, doing demonstration. Like the other day I saw he had a demo. So do demonstrations to show the quality, to show the legitimacy of your product, as opposed to other to counterfeits. Because counterfeits, they really can't say much, because probably they're not even credible. So even in the advertising, in their communication, they don't say much because they are fake.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's
all
what
right.
yeah.
You have an advantage that you're dealing with with original products or credible products. So communication is your advantage point, yeah? Now he goes on to ask, for pitching jobs, how do you engage with clients to keep you at top of mind without canvassing?
How do you?
How do you engage with your clients to keep top of mind without canvassing? This is specifically when you're pitching jobs.
When you're okay, I need to understand. Is this the first time you're going to pitch, or are they current clients, or are they new clients? What I would say is, first of all, is just trying to, as I said before, it's trying to establish a relationship with these clients. You know, identify them, establish a relationship with them, sustain that relationship. And one of building relationship is first of all, continuously giving them information about your services. Send them a brochure about your services. Invite them to, if there's a launch about your product, invite them to your launch. Just keep them informed about what you're doing, so that by the time you go to pitch for a particular job, they already have an idea about you. They know what you do. They know about your business because they've been getting information. So you don't even have to talk to them. You don't even have to canvas, but just you need to know them. You need to know where they are. You need to know their space, and then just sending to them information about your product. You can do an email. You can invite them to a product launch. You can send them a brochure. You can send them a testimonial. Somebody who has used your product. Just that continuous engagement, so that they remember that, hey, they've seen this, they've read about this product, it's a good product. So when you come to pitch, you already have an upper hand because they have some pretty good idea about your product because of that continuous relationship, continuous engagement. You've been sending them information about your product. And so when you come, so you have an upper hand because they have formed a picture about you, or about your product. They know that this is a good product, so they'll want to listen because they've had it. Because you always want a product that you've heard about or somebody has used. That's what I can say.
So he goes on to ask, a force majeure and substantive changes in price or in terms, in short, for quick procurements that makes delivery unlikely or a challenge untenable.
What was the question? I didn't get the question.
I think he's asking, could you use a force majeure, especially for this period, just for this period? And I think the major challenge that David is having, and he can clarify for us in the section down below, is timely delivery. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, can he use a force majeure in terms of the price changes of commodities, what he deals in, or in his terms of his business, of probably engaging the client in those products and services that he does, inclusive delivery? The crisis has affected the delivery timelines. Could he use a force majeure for that?
First, for me, what I think is he needs to have a conversation. He needs to have a conversation with that particular client.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah, because now this is I think he would have to have a conversation with him, because these are unforeseeable circumstances that would prevent him from fulfilling that contract. So I think he will need to have a conversation, a one-on-one conversation with the client, and then they would agree.
So David, I hope your questions have been answered.
Yeah, because as I said, it's all about building relationships are very important. So when you build a relationship, then it's very easy to just pick up the phone or send an email and talk about some of these issues that you're facing, as opposed to not, because if you don't have a relationship, it's so hard for you now to start approaching a client or a supplier when you have a problem, because they don't know you. You only know each other because you send me a product, I pay you, but that relationship is not there. So I think it's a lesson for us business people. We need, and as I said in my 10-minute presentation, that PR is all about relationships. Without building those relationships, it is very hard. It will be very hard for us to operate in our businesses. It will be very hard.
I am just to add on to that, Antoinette, I also read somewhere that sometimes even as you're doing these communications, which are very formal with your organizational templates and,
Yeah.
on social media, on the emails and all the channels that you use, it's also ideal to pick up the phone and call your clients just to find out how they are, not even to talk about business or to talk about where your business stands or what actions you're taking, but just to genuinely find out how they are coping, where they're at, and and I think that could be a stepping stone for business, for a relationship. If you haven't started doing so, you could start now.
Yeah, and just to add on what you're saying, Susan, I'd be happy to come and talk again about how to build relationships with our stakeholders. And these stakeholders include our employees, our suppliers, our creditors, our bankers. How do we build those relationships as we run our business? Because they are very critical in our business. And we should learn now from this COVID-19 pandemic that relationships are very critical, especially in times of a crisis. If you don't have relationships even with your employees, how will you even begin to tell them that you can't pay them and you don't have a relationship with them? How will they, if you have a relationship with them, you can agree even for them to work on without even pay because they'll understand because of that relationship that you built. So I'd be happy to come back again and talk about relationship building as a way to improve our businesses because relationship are very critical, especially now. We need those relationships more than ever in the current crisis that we are facing.
Thank you, Antoinette. I'd be happy to have you back for that.
Yeah.
So now Mwangi Rojo is asking a very interesting question. Mwangi Rojo
Yeah.
is asking, how do you approach a scenario where it is you who needs to be updated by your clients and they don't?
Your clients don't update you.
Like it is you as the business person or as the individual who needs to be updated by your clients and they don't.
Well, you need to call them out and probably ask them that I need this. Can I please have this particular information? He's looking for information and he's not getting. And also I know I've experienced that before when I was working. Sometimes you want information maybe to, like I used to want information to write an annual report and these are my colleagues and I'm asking them, they're not giving me. So I think you need to continue, keep asking them for that information. Send emails that you want information, call them. And if you must, just make an appointment with them and tell them that this is the information you want, because sometimes people are lazy to come up with information. People don't like writing, but probably if you walked to him or went to his office or picked up the phone and called, he'll be able to give you that information on the phone. Probably, probably he wants, maybe it's a document that Rohan is looking for, and maybe that person people don't like writing, doesn't have that time and energy to write a whole document. But if you called me and asked me questions, I'll be able to at least give you that information that you need, that initial information. And then maybe because we have already talked and I've given you some information, and because we have talked and we've already built a rapport by talking, I'll then be able to send you a document to, that to as a follow-up of the conversation that you have. Because sometimes just picking up the telephone and asking them for information, they could give you that information over the phone, as opposed to sitting down and typing and, So just, as I said, consistently, keep on asking for that information. Don't get tired. Make calls, send emails, pick up the phone and call, or even walk to the customer's office and tell them, hey, I really need this information. That's what I do. Just persistent in getting information. And again, developing a relationship with even somebody that in the office who can go and get that information. Maybe this person is a boss. He doesn't have time to look for that small information. Again, relationships. Everything goes back to relationships.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So David Neve again is asking, is rebranding or altering necessary during COVID-19? And how can small businesses do this, especially when it has pivoted on a new or a minor part of their business? For example, BNI made changes. We all saw that. Is this a positive thing? We have seen Omo with Powerform, no that, no planning. Is it something you would recommend?
You see, I would already say yes or no, go for branding. What I'd ask is, what is the objective? Why you need to establish the objective of branding. Why do I want to rebrand my business? Why do I want to rebrand my product? It boils down to that. It boils down on the objectives that you want to achieve. Once you know the objective that you want to achieve and you feel that your old brand will not achieve those objectives, then you can think of rebranding. But you have to understand why. Why are you rebranding? You need to ask yourself why. What is the objective of branding? What am I going to achieve? And then now you decide, because you can't just rebrand for the sake of rebranding. Why are you rebranding? What objective do you want to meet when you rebrand? What does rebranding mean to your business? Once you answer those couple of questions, then you know whether you want to rebrand or not. But I can't just tell you whether it's good to rebrand or not, because I don't know why you want to rebrand. I don't know what objectives you want to meet by rebranding.
Okay.
Yeah, so you need to ask yourself those questions. What is the objective of your rebranding? Why do you want to rebrand? And what will your business gain once you rebrand? And if you have answers to those questions, then well and good, go ahead and rebrand and now start again the entire process of introducing that new brand to the public. You need a lot of campaign. You need to ensure that that new brand has been entrenched in the market, that your audiences understand that this is a better brand and why I should go for this brand and not the other. You need to come out and communicate that brand so that people understand that brand and they embrace it. And that takes, that's why I'm asking, that's why I'm saying that you need to understand why you're branding. You need to have those objectives that why I need to rebrand. Then you can go in, because rebranding is a process. It's a process. And for you to rebrand and entrench that new brand in the minds of your clients. Because now if you rebrand, I forget about the old and this is the new. So is it the same thing? Is this the same business? What are they doing? Oh, okay. So by the time now you get me to understand, it takes a while. So that's why I'm telling David, maybe we can have this discussion further. I need to understand why he wants to rebrand. What are the objectives? What does he want to achieve? That's what I can see.
I was going to add, but I think you've mentioned it. What perception you create, especially in terms of communication. People knew you, and those who knew you at a personal level and even at a business level, Tara, for providing a particular service or product. And then now, all of a sudden, you're talking about something completely different. Is there a transition that you would advise to say, oh, we are now evolving from this to that, so that by the time you're talking about your new brand or your new product or service?
Yeah. Actually, there is, before you need to tell people, like you know what ABSA, the bank, did? We knew that they were going to change from Barclays Bank to ABSA. You need to have a properly executed campaign so that by the time you change from this brand to that brand, we already know. Like the way we knew, like Barclays Bank, it was a whole campaign. By the time they turned to ABSA, we knew that Barclays Bank, it was effortless. Barclays Bank, ABSA, so it was nothing new. So what I can say, so yes, you need to really educate people on their new brand so that by the time the brand is coming to the market, we know that this is that same brand, because you've already created that awareness. It's in my mind, so I'm not going to get confused. I know that brand. So that's why I'm telling him what are the objectives. You have to put all these structures in place, because you also don't want to lose your customers. You don't want to lose business because you're rebranding and nobody knows. So it's like starting a new business, and starting a new business, you can ask Madam President, it is hard. Yeah. So that's what I can say. That's what I can add. I can, in response to that transition. Yes, you need to have a pre-campaign so that people seamlessly move to your brand.
So it is an option, David, but it is an option that you think you need to think of through and further before you take that action.
Yeah. And I'll be happy to discuss with him on a different platform to
Great.
understand why the objective. Then we can work together. If he wants to transit, then we can work together. I can work with him.
All right, so moving on, Momo is asking, how can smaller companies be able to have organized crisis communications? Because it may look costly. Antoinette gave a very good example, but I'll let you answer that again, Antoinette.
As I said, all of us in BNI, we are small, I can say not very large businesses. We probably may not have all the expertise as part of our team or part of our employees. So I said that because we are a team, we are about 41 experts in different fields. And you can get this expertise, you can get this expertise within BNI. You can get me, you can approach that, you can approach BNI members and invite them or kindly request them to be part of your crisis committee, of your crisis team. Or if you're not in BNI and probably you're a business person, and I'm sure that even as a business person, you have friends, you have peers who are in different industries, you're in other clubs, you can request them to be part of your crisis committee. Then you can tell them about your business, and I'm sure they'll be happy to come on board and help you, because this is not that they'll be sitting with you every day. This is just a team. They get to understand your business, you meet what you do, they get to understand their roles and abilities. And then when there's a crisis, because they'll once in a while be meeting them, you'll be telling them about your business, they'll be able to quickly come in and help you manage that crisis. So even without a budget, you can still approach your peers, you can approach your friends, you can approach people from BNI to be part of the team. Because in BNI, or even outside your own peers, I'm sure you can get a lawyer, you can get a person from HR, you can get a person from operations, you can get somebody from communications too, and you can request them to, and I'm sure they'll be happy to be part of the team, part of your team, to help you manage your crisis. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So Maxi is complimenting you for your storytelling and giving examples of crisis management.
Thank you,
Now,
Max.
she asked, except for the company mentioned, are there any other companies that have gone down and managed to bounce back after a bad PR experience?
Okay, I know there are very many examples that I have, but I could probably share with you on the group. There are local companies, there are other case studies that I can share with you. There's Kenya Pipeline, but they came up because there are quite a couple, and I'd be happy to share those stories, send you those stories, and to those businesses or companies that have made it or have sunk or have to work really, really hard to repair their reputation. So there are many, but probably not be able to share with you now. I had those two examples, but there are very many case studies that I can share with you. Yeah.